Welcome to another episode of Let's Review Stargate with Layla and you, a Stargate rewatch where we love the show deeply, question it freely, and have a lot to say about both. And I'm happy to have you here. For me, these Stargate stories matter, not just because they're funny, but also because they aren't perfect, and as such invite us to think about ourselves, the world around us, and the things we sometimes take for granted. Let's see what holds up, what doesn't, and what hits differently when we watch it now from today's perspective. Alright, let's talk Stargate and see where it takes us. Just a little heads up, this is one of those episodes where the story goes deep, and so do I. Today we're reviewing the 21st episode of the first season, There But For the Grace of God. The original air date was February 20th, 1998. Oh, how the time flies. The story was by David Kemper, the only one he ever wrote for Stargate SG-1. The teleplay for today's episode was written by Robert C. Cooper, and the episode was directed by David Worry Smith, the first of his 12 episodes directed for Stargate SG-1 and in the later years Stargate Atlantis. The episode title seems to reference a quote often attributed to English preacher John Bradford. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And might I say, mega kudos to the writers of Stargate, for as I delve deeper into the origins of this quote, I uncover layer after layer of meaning that all connected back to what we see happen, thereby making this episode resonate all the more. For this review, I'm going to do things a little differently. Usually I walk us through the episode, but given that the title in and of itself already packed in so much meaning, first I'm going to unpack the meaning, and then I'm going to walk through the episode real quick about the stuff that popped out at me, things I thought were funny, questions that were raised, moments in the episode that I just wanted to gush about. But for now, I really wanted to unpack the many layered meanings I found in researching the episode title. Case in point. Bradford reportedly said this as he saw people being led to the gallows for their sins. In this moment, he was expressing an awareness that under different circumstances, it could just as easily been him, which is a theme so strongly tied to Daniel's experience throughout this episode, couldn't be more aptly named, honestly. Upon further research into that particular quote, I found out that it closely resembles Corinthians 15:10 in the New Testament. And I'll be honest, that verse has always sounded less like genuine humility to me and more like a humble brag disguised as gratitude, which, yes, probably tells you a lot about my complicated relationship with organized religion, for it kind of sent me down a path of how easily language meant to express humility can slippity slide into exceptionalism, into chosen one territory, where success in life becomes proof of being favored by divine intervention, or God's grace, or whatever you want to call it, rather than it being the result of circumstance and the impact our choices make. And if that theme happens to sound familiar to you, it should. Stargate has been exploring this since day one, blend reality with science fiction. Once again, a prime example of why I love this show, and I think everyone should know of this show. That's why we're all here, presumably. Anywho, moving on. As therapist, but also just life in general, I see this dynamic at play all the time. People either consciously or subconsciously hand over their power to another person, an authority figure, gods, hoping someone else will come and save them. And I want to be careful here because I know what survival mode actually looks like, because I've spent the majority of my life in different stages of survival mode, hence my CPTSD. So I know that when you're in it, you don't feel powerful. And sometimes just getting through the day or maintaining the status quo takes everything you've got. And that isn't a personal failing. That is how we humans survive traumatic situations. Sometimes all the choices available to us are bad ones, and hardly if ever is there a clean way out. Mine surely wasn't. So I'm not saying just take your power back. I'm saying our power is, was, and always will be there. Yes, sometimes it's buried way deep down underneath a shit ton of dysfunctional coping mechanisms that at one time have kept us safe and alive. Mainly to say, and I can truly testify to it because I've lived it, when the conditions allow, our power can be reclaimed, slowly and on our own terms. That is exactly Teal'c's storyline too. Or can we truly fault him for his decisions in this episode, given the circumstances that he is in? Knowing what we know, that deep down, Teal'c is well aware that the Goa'ulds aren't gods. The Jaffa are being enslaved and oppressed by them. It's turning into a straight-up therapy session / fascism lecture. Seriously, people, we can have religious and moral discussions all day, every day, for sure. And yeah, I know. I just went from an episode title to a full-blown existential life philosophy spiral in record time. What can I say? Welcome to my brain, and if by now you haven't figured it out, these are the kind of things you're signing up for. You're listening to my podcast. You are welcome. As I started to unpack the title and its origins, It showed me the many deeply layered differences between our universe and the alternate reality universe that seem to have made all the difference in how things played out. Because what we see in this episode isn't divine grace. We see what happens when significant moments of connection never happened. For instance, in this alternate reality, Daniel and O'Neill never met, and thus Daniel never went with O'Neill to Abydos. They never would have met the Abydonians. Daniel wouldn't have met Sharae, but O'Neill also wouldn't have met Skara. We see that O'Neill never really started to heal from losing his son, and it seems that he threw himself into his career and is, in the alternate reality, not only a brigadier general, but also the leader of the SGA. I'm gonna come back to that point later, as opposed to Hammond, who in this alternate reality isn't a general but just a colonel. Samantha Carter seemingly never joined the Air Force in this alternate reality, and here she is just a doctor in astrophysics, and has none of those important connections between O'Neill, Daniel, Carter, and even Hammond happened. They never went to Chulak, they never met Tilk, and Tilk never defected. Thereby, Tilk never had the opportunity to see that the humans of Earth were his ticket to freedom, the liberation from the oppression of the Gould. Another interesting distinction is that Dr. Catherine Langford, in this alternate reality, is still in control of her Stargate and wasn't forced to retire. And apparently, without all these crucial developments, their Earth now is on the brink of destruction. So when I talk about grace here, I'm not talking about God picking favorites, as in God just favored our Daniel better. I'm talking about in what, in my opinion, God's grace truly is, and that is our ability to love, connect with, and form relationships with those even when we come from different backgrounds, or especially when we come from different backgrounds. I know I'm not proclaiming that Daniel is our Earth's saving grace, pun intended, but it clearly shows that the person that Daniel Jackson represents, was of great importance in how things in the SGC played out. I know there wasn't just Daniel. I think the beauty of it all is that this episode shows how all of them, in their own way, contributed to create this team, this family unit. They bring out the best in each other and thereby keep all of us safe. For real, in this episode, I think the writers pretty much justified why Stargate SG-1 is such a fucking good show. Then and now. I mean, it's 28 years later, and this episode is still so fucking relevant today. That is just a testament to good writing, people. Like, if you're just tuning into this show for the first time, these are the kinds of deep, good scripts that you can expect from Stargate, let alone the performances that are just the cherry, chocolate fudge, caramel, whatever you sprinkle on that thing, on top. These are the reasons why I love this show. Have I told you that lately? Because beneath the sci-fi, it's asking us to really give this narrative a deep consideration, how it shows up in our lives and thereby influences the direction our lives take. What I really liked about this episode is that Daniel's contribution now truly became, once again, for reals this time, invaluable to the continued survival of, well, Earth. So no biggie. He now is the one that solves this all-important riddle, thereby winning his cred back that he seemingly lost in Torment of Tantalus, where we learned it wasn't actually Daniel that was the first one, the chosen one. Couldn't resist, sorry. That cracked the code of the seventh symbol, or, how to get the gate to work on Earth, as Ernest Littlefield apparently already figured that out 50 years prior. But in this episode, either the writers, consciously or unconsciously, fully thrusted Daniel's significance back to the forefront and truly proved, once and for all, Daniel's importance to the Stargate program. And I mean, really, all of our lives are just better with Daniel Jackson in it, right? So let's dig into the episode. Much like the previous episode, O'Neill arrives feeling chipper as on their arrival, saying, "Good morning, campers." Unlike in other episodes, we see Daniel busy filming through his video camera, but this becomes extremely relevant later in the episode, nudge nudge wink wink. And Tilk recognizes that an old battle took place here, most likely with Goa'uld weaponry, and yet there are no bodies. It seemingly was so long ago that both the human remains and their clothing have all disappeared, which is a little odd. Seeing that the information we later learned from this destroyed world was, still good. But, yeah. Next, we see that O'Neill spots a giant stuck on the ground, asking Tilk if he recognizes the imagery. And suddenly Tilk's buttocks seem to clench as he says, "We must return to Earth as quickly as possible." And for Tilk, that is a certain urgency that we usually don't get from him. So, Apparently, the symbol is of Korishnai, loosely translated to mean turn back. And I love that O'Neill then asks, "Does it elaborate?" But thankfully, we have our very own Tilk translator, who then explains that after the Goa'uld bombed the shit out of the planet, thereby making its surface radioactive, they leave the sign behind for other Goa'uld and Jaffa to warn them that this planet is dangerous and that everyone is dead. Oh, how considerate of them. Apparently, even within the Goa'uld, chivalry is not dead. Yet, sorta. Moving on. O'Neill takes Tilk's warning to heart, and they go in search of Carter and Daniel to return to Earth. In the meantime, apparently, Daniel and Captain Carter seem to have found a lab, or as surprisingly Carter here is the one that calls it a souvenir shop. Daniel, of course, wants to take all these souvenirs home, but O'Neill doesn't want to hear it. This, of course, doesn't stop Daniel from trying to bag some things as the rest of the team returns to the gate. Daniel happens upon an oddish shit-looking gizmo that in no way looks related to that mirror, but okay. As he touches it, it seems to turn on the mirror, thus drawing his attention to it. And though we see a reflection of the room, we don't see Daniel's reflection, compelling him, I'm guessing, to reach out and touch it. And he runs out to ask for help, as apparently he wants to take this mirror home, only to discover that he is all alone. And what then made me really laugh is that he says, "Oh, I really hate it when this happens," thereby indicating that he apparently has been left behind on more than just this occasion. I wonder what the story is there. And to wrap up this scene, I really love that overhead shot of him dialing the gate. It's a lovely way to showcase that beautiful DHD. Upon arriving through the gate back on Earth, it's not exactly the warm welcome they usually seem to get. People don't seem to recognize Daniel. And when we see Hammond in a different outfit addressing him, responding to Daniel calling him General, and I really love that they put this quote in again, "Do you see any stars on my uniform?" And incidentally, this time he's right. Nowhere on it says General, or are there any stars visible, because apparently, shocker, this isn't General Hammond, but this is Colonel Hammond, asking in his bold, crass, sassy, Hammondy little self, "Who the hell are you?" It doesn't matter where we are, it doesn't matter if he's a general or a colonel. You gotta love Hammond. At least I do. The next unexpected meeting we get is with Dr. Catherine Langford. Yet when Daniel addresses her as Catherine, she wishes to be addressed as Dr. Langford instead of the more familiar Catherine. Understandable, especially when you learn that they have met, and apparently Daniel was rude to her. For she does claim to know him and his more radical ideas, which I thought personally was rich coming from the lady who knows better than most that Daniel Jackson's radical ideas are based on truth. I mean, hello, the gate, the pyramids, landing ships, aliens. So I do think it speaks to her character that she does admit that she referenced his work in deciphering the gate. And I just cannot get over in the scene how cute Daniel is with his little dance when he says, "Unless the last 2 years have been a wacky, wacky dream, I am a member of SG-1. That one got me every time. Next, he asks to see Captain Samantha Carter, and it is now that he learns that not only Hammond has a different designation, but apparently Carter isn't even in the military. And I like it that even when he's becoming more angry and says, "Catherine," he quickly remembers his manners and corrects himself, saying Dr. Langford. He's such a well-mannered man. And it isn't until he mentions Ernest that Catherine seems rattled. For even in our universe, where supposedly Daniel, Jack, Samantha were all very close to Catherine, they didn't even know about Ernest. And it wasn't until they viewed that video from the Pentagon that they learned of Catherine's long-lost love, Ernest. So by him knowing this, seems to truly drive home to Catherine, or Dr. Langford, I should say, that the Daniel Jackson she's dealing with now is formidable. Upon meeting Jack, Daniel goes through the same dance. "I know you, yet you don't seem to know me." And I love how he explains who Tilk is. Big guy, gold emblem on his forehead, gold in his stomach. Can't miss him. That really does sum up T really well, huh? However, this is, in my opinion, where Daniel now makes his first real mistake, by giving them the symbols to Chulak. Though yes, to be fair, he didn't know at that point in time that Earth was under imminent attack by the Goa'uld. Enter Samantha Carter. And again, we do the same dance. "I know you, you don't know me." And when she tells them that they lost Washington and Philadelphia, Daniel, and us, the viewer, now learn that Earth is apparently under attack from the Goa'ulds, and they are destroying cities left, right, and center. And, when you look at that map every single time, my thought is, well, I'm dead, because all of the Netherlands, Belgium, even the UK is covered in red, thus meaning apparently we're all destroyed. Who'd have thought we would be considered a universal threat, or, at least to the Stargate writers? Thank you, I guess. Let's just hope that we don't live through a time where we actually are gonna have to have a map look like that, right? Okay, moving on. Daniel then learns what they intend to do with the symbols to Chulak that he gave them. Honestly, in my opinion, he shouldn't be surprised. They are now trying to send a nuclear bomb through in hoping that it'll stop the attack on Earth. And if you go back to not only the movie, but the Children of the Gods episode, where their first instinct was to send the bomb through, I think maybe you could explain it along the lines of he knows Jack and Catherine and Samantha, and he would never have guessed them to be the kind of people that would do this. But then again, our General Hammond was the kind of person that was going to do this until, they stopped him. But I just thought of that now. But yeah, and to be fair, in the alternate reality, they're in survival mode. It pushes leaders towards shows of force instead of taking the time for careful consideration and possibly even contemplation. The difference between our realities wasn't who is good or who is evil. The Goa'uld are still the enemy in both timelines. But in our timeline, Daniel is able to separate the evil of the Goa'uld from the enslaved Jaffa oppressed by them. Daniel still sees the Jaffa as people. O'Neill, the one under attack in this alternate reality, only sees a threat that needs to be eliminated. Therefore, he decides to send that nuke to Chulak, even knowing it likely won't change what was already happening to his Earth. It was clearly the act of a desperate man, and, as the saying goes, desperate times call for desperate measures. And while I agree with Daniel, and also think what good will it do now, they're already here, I can also still understand O'Neill's choice. And we do see him pay the ultimate price for it, because when O'Neill decided to bomb Chulak, Teal'c lost his family, and with that, any chance that he might have seen the humans as allies instead of enemies. And that is one of the greatest tragedies of this episode. In our universe, the ability to connect with people wherever he goes allows the forming of some seriously significant alliances and relationships to develop. I genuinely think this episode clearly wanted us to sit with that, to fully grasp the impact of our choices, and also how connections change, sometimes even save lives. The fact that O'Neill does go and try and talk to Teal'c, even though he pretty much knows for a fact that he won't survive because he knows what he did. So I think that reaffirmed that the O'Neill that we know in our reality, the good man, is still in there, even though in this reality he hadn't really healed from the loss of his son. And he was a hardened brigadier general, burdened by all his responsibilities, but carrying it with honor and grace. Though in the heat of the moment, under pressure, made some decisions that maybe looking back, but 2020 hindsight is always nice to have in hindsight. But I like that in him honorably facing his death, in him even being willing to go talk to Teal'c in the first place, 99.9% sure that that was going to be the end of him. He still did it. He could have just flat out denied and said, fuck that shit, I'm not gonna willingly walk towards my death. The fact that he did, in whatever reality we are, Brigadier Colonel Jonathan Jack O'Neill, with 2 L's, is an honorable man. They mention the beta site, and when Daniel asks about it, it turns out to be an off-world location where they are sending the scientists, world leaders, and doctors, and you could go off on a tangent on that one, see the movie 2012, but I will refrain. But it does lead me into the next question. If you only send the leaders of the countries, yet not the people, who are the leaders gonna rule, right? When there's no one left. If you put a type A personality group together, Lord knows what that's gonna look like. Who am I kidding? I've seen that happen. It's bad. It's bad. But that's a side note. Focus. We then learn that apparently the death toll already seems to be 1.5 billion. I mean, does put a dent in our overcrowded world population problem, doesn't it? Not that I'm suggesting that this is a good way of making a dent in that, but I'm also the kind of person that can't refrain from thinking, solves that problem. But that's beside the point. Sorry. You see, even with these supposedly simple scenes, my brain goes off on so many tangents, generating so many questions, but I'm trying to stick to the point here. Okay, keep going, Leila. You can do it. And maybe because I know where this was going, in rewatching this now, years later, it seems to me that it takes Daniel a long ass time to figure out that this is not his world, but an alternate reality. And I'm guessing back in those days, the late 90s, the beginning of sci-fi becoming more widely known to the public, not everyone knew what a alternate reality or dimensions and such were, but I'm guessing now with all the Marvel and the DC fans widespread, in addition to, the scientists who are all too familiar with alternate dimensions and realities and such, it took Daniel a long time to get to this point, but it made me realize that there was once upon a time, before the internet and, a lot of very popular sci-fi shows, maybe not everyone was so up to speed on what alternate realities and dimensions and all those things were. So I'll try to be gentle in judging Daniel for not figuring this out way sooner. For it's now Catherine, Carter, and Daniel together, realizing that he is an alternate reality. And this shows the true combination of strength here. Carter figures out that Daniel is from an alternate reality. Catherine Lamford poses the theory that the mirror, which they are guessing is made out of naquadah, the same material as the gate, is the thing that caused Daniel to shift realities. And by Daniel knowing things about them, intimate things that they couldn't possibly have shared with the Daniel from that reality, they solve that riddle. After it starts to sink in that Daniel is in an alternate reality, he tries to look up his alter and learns that he's dead. And in true Daniel style, he just says, "Uh-oh, I think I'm dead." I love that. I do. It is so... I'm freaking out, but I'm not really freaking out. I'm cool. Just takes it in stride. I love him. I really do. Next, it seems that the Voyager Colonel Hammond is referring to earlier seems to reference Air Force One. And it seems with all the world leaders evacuating to Cheyenne Mountain, the Goa'ulds have figured out that this is most likely where they have a Stargate. So next we see a Goa'uld Hatak vessel land right on top of the mountain, bringing the fight for Earth's survival right to their doorstep. General O'Neill starts to evacuate the base and tells them to start blowing all access routes to the surface, thereby trying to slow the Jaffa down while they wait till the incoming wormhole disengages and they can dial out again. Because that is another thing in this episode that we learn. A gate, apparently, can only remain active for 38 minutes, and they only seem to discover this after they sent the bomb through to Chulak, because now the Goa'uld are dialing in to block their escape through the gate, which at the time didn't really register with me, but now rewatching it made me think, why didn't they deploy this tactic earlier? Were they unsure if we even had a gate? I mean, if we have an iris and they dial in and they can't come through, but then the gate would still connect, so they dialed the coordinates for Earth, they would still discover that we would have had a gate. Or is this just in response to them pissing the Goa'uld off and they now want to stop them from trying to bomb more world? Again, I only thought of this now. How about y'all? Are there things in this episode that maybe you didn't clock the first time, or if you're a first time viewer and you watch this in 2025, 26, whatever, you also think certain things like, hey, how's that? Or why did they do that? Whatever. Come talk about it in our community on YouTube. Anyway, moving on. What I found interesting, again, so many interesting things, Samantha Carter mentions to Daniel that they too went to the planet as designation P3R233, but when they went there, they didn't find a mirror. And that got me to think. So Daniel transported it along with himself to this reality, which seems unlikely. Because how is it then that we saw this reality's exact lab reflected in the mirror on their side before Daniel touched it? And he was transported into the exact same lab on the exact same planet that we and they apparently designated P3R233, where the gate also was just in the next room. I guess when this Stargate team went to P3R233, they mustn't look very hard. So I don't know if that was an editing mistake or something, but yeah. Now, also just made me realize, how did they even find the coordinates to P3R233? For our gate addresses, the computer spits out after they entered all the information they got from the Abydonian star map. But if they never met Daniel, Daniel never met the Abydonians, they never would have gone in search of anything remotely related to this, at least in the movie they didn't. And I'm not saying that they couldn't have found the star map without Daniel. It is only after Daniel spent a year on Abydos he found it. I have so many questions. For now, I'm guessing, okay, we'll accept the fact that you two found the star map and you two entered it into the computer on our Earth, or I guess in the alternate reality's Earth, which then also spit out all these gate addresses that they would then visit. But still, I can't help but think apparently it was too hard to look into the next room. There I go, overthinking it again, no doubt. It really is that once you start thinking about it and then start thinking about it, you can't help but find some either writing, editing questions, plot hole questions. But this one kind of stuck out to me while I was recording this review. So of course I had to share. Apparently, in our reality, we got the mirror. In this reality, it seems that they received a recording from the quadrant of space where P3R233 resides. By now having Daniel as the person to listen to this message and be able to decipher it because he was the one who learned to speak it on Abydos, by allowing him to listen to that message and translate the warning, they are doing us a huge, spoiler, favor. After that disappointing realization in Torment of Tantalus, where Daniel's significance was highly overstated, and if anything, maybe even fabricated, which I gotta admit kind of hurt because I really like Daniel Jackson. But doing this intentionally or as a happy accident, I don't know, I don't care. But I was so glad to realize that by adding this little thing, like I said, Daniel is not our saving grace, not just Daniel, anyway. But by adding this specifically being solved by Daniel and the knowledge that he acquired on Abydos, proving him invaluable to the, at least in our case, spoiler, I'm just gonna keep going here, people. It's season 1 of a TV show that lasts 10 seasons, so we're all hopefully aware that Earth is going to survive for a little bit anyway. It proves him invaluable to the continued survival of our Earth. That course correction by the writers or intentional redefinition of Daniel's significance to the Stargate program was very much appreciated. Thank you. Anyway, the message he deciphers says, "Beware the destroyers, they come from ... Carter then tells him at least that part of the message they did figure out, and she gives him the clusters that they isolated from all those dots, which Daniel then again figures out refers to a gate address. Teamwork makes the dream work, baby. And this now proves our Danny Boy's invaluable addition to the team. And here comes that camera thing that I referred to earlier that was interesting because we usually didn't see him do that. But Daniel so conveniently the gate from P3R223 on film so they can quickly figure out which symbols the cluster of numbers are assigned to and thus figure out the gate address referred to in the message. And as they are watching that video, it just is it just me or did Daniel film his team members for a long ass time? Well, he was supposed to be filming his surroundings, and I mean, he especially seems to linger on Captain Samantha Carter. And I mean, luckily for this episode, it worked well, but I couldn't help but notice. Is there something you want to tell us there, Danny boy? Something else that caught my ear is that Daniel refers to Chulak as the Jaffa homeworld, and yet it isn't where the attack originated from, it seems. Plus, the people in this reality already blew up Chulak, and the ships are already here, so thank you, but too late to spade? Well, for them, at least. But yeah. As Daniel uses the video of the gate and the DHD from P3R223, he writes down the gate address. He doesn't seem to recognize the gate address, so therefore I extrapolated that the gate address in the message is not the gate address from Chulak, which then stands to reason that Apophis apparently holds at least 2 planets under his control. Oh, the things you can learn when you rewatch a show. I mean, sometimes I try to remind myself to watch it from a first-timer's viewpoint and not give away too many spoilers. What I genuinely love about the show is how over time, it all just came together so beautifully. And that, yes, it's still season 1 and they were still figuring themselves out. And yes, I also point those things out. But through it all, they did it beautifully, marvelous on so many things. Like I said, this show aged well. I love it. All 10 fucking seasons and the movie and the spin-offs. So, can you feel the love tonight? I'm filming it tonight, so can you feel the love tonight? I'm feeling it. I love it when you rewatch a show and then you try to just take it all in. And on the one hand, I still remember so much from it. And then on the other hand, you rewatch it now from an entirely different perspective than I did back in the 90s. And still just, you learn something new every single time you watch it. Let's get back on track reviewing this episode. Having another gate address in his arsenal, O'Neill now wants to send a bomb through to the gate address of the message that Daniel deciphered, but Daniel rightly points out, what good will it do now? And he reiterates my earlier point. The ships are already here. You'd just be killing a whole bunch of, and I fully agree with Daniel here, innocent people. He even mentions that they could have an iris like us, but to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong here, we never really see anyone other than us that has a shield such as an iris, right? And I mean, if you know, you know, not for a very long time, but you kind of could still count that one as us, right? So I'm not counting that one. But like other worlds that we visit and such, I don't think we ever come across a planet that thought of the same thing, which is, I mean, had they done that, it would have prevented us from reaching certain worlds, I guess. But it was nice that our people apparently were so smart so early on to figure this out. And it was necessary, clearly, because otherwise we would have been wiped out dozens of times. I mean, after the Children of the Gods episode, they continued to send, presumably, entire armies of Jaffa trying to invade Earth. But yeah. Anyway, Daniel now seems to change tack and asks them, let me go home. Let me get this address to my world so I can stop an attack there. And I do like it that in this discussion, he acknowledges that we, probably more than they, and yeah, pissed off the goal. So yeah, they are very likely to come after us in our world too. But I couldn't help but think you are basically asking them to sacrifice themselves, all of Earth, to save your Earth, an entirely different alternate reality. And that got me to thinking, I don't know what I would do if I was, General O'Neill and all the other people in this world. You like to think I'd make the honorable sacrifice, but I mean, even if you're sacrificing your whole world, wouldn't you fight to the last second? But yeah, that kind of makes you think. If you view this episode from General O'Neill, Colonel Hammond, Dr. Carter, Dr. Langfield's perspective, would you have been as cool about this as they are about to be? And we're, of course, rooting for Daniel. So, yeah, I do gotta admit that in the end, he does ask them to join him through the gate so that they can come to his world. So, in their credit to Daniel, he does try to do the moral, ethical, kind thing. But, of course, sorry, spoiler. Honest to God, I try not to spoil while I'm doing this, but usually I'm assuming, at least, that you've watched the episode before you listen to me. So, yeah, there. Anyway, yeah. I noted that, and then I noted him doing that at the end, so that was nice. But still, at this point in time, in this moment in the episode, it made me think like, huh, how would I respond if someone came here from an alternate reality in our greatest moment of need and basically said, you know what, y'all are dead as a doornail. Sacrifice your last option of escape so that I can save another alternate world that doesn't involve you whatsoever. But yeah, anyway, moving on. Of course, here I'm delighted that they decide to help Daniel. And to buy time, they decide to use his videotape of his alternate realities SG-1 with the Colonel O'Neill, the Captain Carter, and most importantly, our little Tilky. So eventually, General O'Neill does reluctantly agree to go and try and convince this Tilk of all this alternate reality stuff and hope to, again, turn him against Apophis. And I found Daniel's wondrous stare as he learns that Carter and O'Neill are engaged in this reality fucking hilarious. And also clapping back to my response with the videotape, I couldn't help but also think, are you a little jealous? Again, thinking back to that moment when Carter was kissing Nareem from the Poland homeworld and he interrupted. It's kind of always implied or suggested, and yeah, they do that a lot. Like a lot, a lot. Especially now with knowing where it's gonna go, and yeah. When I look at it, it made me laugh to look at him go like, wait, what? And I like it that it's Hammond that ends up giving the men a speech about being proud to serve with them when they are, yeah, all most likely, about to die. Bit weird that it wasn't, General O'Neill, but then again, the dude had a bigger mission at the moment, so okay. I do not know who made this decision, but the person that decided to plonk a big ass ponytail on top of Christopher Judge's big bald head, I want to kiss you. And you should be granted all the awards because that was fucking ingenious. Not to mention, it really makes me wonder if there are images or video from that time where Christopher Judge just lets loose with that tail. Please tell me those exist and that someone is willing to share. All I kept imagining was him like whipping it around. Sorry, that's just totally weird, but from someone who had long hair her entire childhood because I wasn't allowed short hair and now currently have short hair. Yeah. I mean, I have a short do because I want it, but like if you wear a wig or suddenly have long hair again, you cannot not play with it, right? Or is that just me? Uh-oh. Did I just reveal a certain weird kink that I'm not even aware of? Again, this is a very serious, dramatic episode, hitting you in all the feels. And yet, seeing something like that just made me, well, you heard me. I just saw Christopher Judge just going whip it with the thing. But yeah, back to the seriousness of the situation. I don't know if this is the first time we see this, but we see Colonel Hammond, Dr. Carter, and Dr. Catherine Langford enact a destruct sequence that'll blow the mountain sky high in case they lose control over the gate room, which is very smart. And again, this is an alternate reality where we learn such things, just like the 38-minute window. But it kind of made me think, is it that they just thought of these things at this point in time and then just adopted it across all realities, including, the one that we are gonna eventually return to? But also, if you really want to delve into the story of it all, I wonder how much of this was in response to Daniel's report on this event. How much was already in place in our world and how much was adopted from Daniel's case report? Or was it just that the writers thought of this while writing this episode and then implemented it as standard SGC procedure? Again, inquiring minds want to know. And through the whole confrontation between Tilk and General O'Neill, we do see that Tilk is shocked and torn based on the information General O'Neill gives him, and you kind of start hoping that he switches sides again. As soon as O'Neill mentions Ryak, Tilk tells him that he knows his family is now dead, due to the bomb that General O'Neill sent through the gate to Chulak. And I mean, is there then any other way to respond other than to kill O'Neill? And I gotta say, it's not that I don't understand General O'Neill's decision. And yet, I am impressed by his acceptance of the consequences in this moment of making that decision. And he just takes it. He doesn't beg or run, he just accepts defeat, which I find oddly honorable. So that was, I thought, well done. Of course, sad to see one of our beloved characters die, but, technically, just borrowing him for an episode. As Catherine tries to get at least Carter and Daniel through the gate, promising she'll try to join them as soon as the gate connects, but we all know that's not going to happen. Unfortunately, neither is Carter. I'm going to get back to that in a second because that scene deserves its own accolade. For when she goes to grab the remote for the mirror, Catherine tells Daniel either way, they're good. For he helped her reunite her alternate with Ernest. And from her perspective, I now understood her choice because that's a beautiful way of seeing it. And it made me understand why she would be willing to help Daniel get back to his own reality to try and save his own Earth, and her sacrificing her life in trying to help him get there. Okay, so when Carter goes to grab the remote in the conference room, then fibs to the Jaffa, trying to delay them by saying she knows things the Apophis will want to know, but then as soon as she's able, she blows them all to hell, as she so badass says. So I guess that also means that we have to now say bye-bye to that remote, but luckily apparently the mirror seems to work perfectly fine without it. So I like that that's, again, a badass way of seeing Carter die. She might just be a doctor of astrophysics, but it's nice to know that deep down, she really, no matter what designation she carries, will always be that badass chick. I like that. As we see Teal'c breach the gate room, he and Daniel are having this tense standoff before Daniel runs and jumps through the gate, getting clipped by a staff blast. Teal'c aims at him right before the mountain self-destructs. So, if we're keeping a tally, O'Neill, Carter, Catherine, basically everyone in Shy Mountain is dead, including Teal'c and all of his Jaffa. So that's a lot of dead people. And the 1.5 billion that, As we're nearing the end of the episode, Daniel runs back to the mirror, touches it, and passes out. Luckily, though, Colonel O'Neill, Captain Carter, and Teal'c were already there looking for him. Which kind of makes me now wonder how long were they searching for him, and how is it that no one ever, in their search for Daniel, accidentally or on purpose, touched that mirror and also came into the alternate reality? Although, if you then go back to that earlier theory, where apparently the mirror only exists in one reality at a time, as the alternate reality didn't find a mirror on P3R233 when they were there, you could say that the mirror transported with Daniel to the alternate reality, and now that he touched it again, he went back to his own reality and the mirror reappeared with him, I guess? Could work. What do y'all think? How do you make sense of this scene? And I found it a little funny that it's then Teal'c that recognizes the wound on Daniel's arm as a blast weapon, and yeah, your alter gave it to him. And just as they try to move Daniel, he grabs hold of Jack and ominously warns them, "We are in very big trouble. They're coming. They're coming." Now that is a cliffhanger, people. And to wrap up this review, at the end of this episode, I wanted to walk through all of the differences I clocked between Stargate Universe's reality and this alternate reality to see which one I caught, which ones I possibly missed, and if so, please do share. For instance, in the alternate reality, the complex isn't called Stargate Command, because when Daniel is in the conference room, behind him, where we usually see the SGC emblem, it now read SGA. And though it's never explicitly mentioned in the episode, I had to Google this, it is apparently widely interpreted as referring to Stargate Association. I also found some people who said they thought it was in reference to either agency, administration. I mean, oh, hell no, not that one. That one I veto immediately, but okay. And there was also one who said alliance, but that got me thinking, an alliance with whom? As in other world, or the UN, the other countries, or just like the Air Force? And it also seems that they use this alternate SGC in another episode, or, the SGA, according to Gate World. I don't remember what episode that would have been then, but we will clock it once we get there. I think this is the first episode where we hear of a Genesis list and a beta site, referring to an off-world location we could safely retreat to in case Earth is under attack, or, as they also later start to use it, just an easy fallout base in case Stargate Command is compromised, which, smart move. This episode is also the first time that we learn that a wormhole can only stay active for 38 minutes straight. And because our computers are slow as fuck to dial the gate, and I mean, yes, you see them dial the DHD 10 times as fast, we need to get the computer to dial faster. We also, I think, in this episode for the first time learn of an auto-destruct option in case the base is overrun, where it blows the entire complex, presumably burying the Stargate, preventing any further invasion through the gate. And in this reality, we see O'Neill and Carter finally truly getting together and actually even be engaged, which was kind of cute. No kissy kissy though. Though I think in other episodes they said it wouldn't, but in this episode they claimed that a Hatak vessel can penetrate them even deep underground in Chine Mountain, according to Carter, as they saw how the blast from their alternate realities Hatak vessels seemed to have been able to take out major Earth cities. So you could say maybe their gold weaponry was a lot more powerful than the ones in our reality, but they never really go into that any further. But anyway, those were the things that I picked out that were different from the alternate reality. Did you pick up anything that I missed? If so, let us know. I always love to learn more. For now, we're gonna go home, lick our proverbial wounds, or in Daniel's case, our actual wounds, and the next episode pretty much picks up right around the time that they're still bandaging his shoulder in the infirmary. And that episode, called Politics, which should give you a very good indication what kind of an episode that is going to be about, is one of 3 parts, including the season finale and the first episode of the second. So luckily we can just sail right on through into season 2. But imagine having that cliffhanger and then having to wait months. That's the benefit now of watching old shows on streaming. You can just sail right on through. Although there was a little je ne sais quoi, sort of, not really. Well, I remember before I watched Sherlock how people were always complaining, apparently on Tumblr, that the Supernatural fans shouldn't bitch and moan about having to wait a few months between seasons because we got, well, same to Stargate, 23 episodes a season. And yeah, once I started to watch Sherlock with only like 4 episodes a season, granted, those episodes were the equivalent of 2 episodes of Stargate or Supernatural, but I feel your pain. Luckily, Fez and I look at it. I waited until there were at least 4 seasons of Sherlock for me to go through, minimizing my anguish. But for now, we still have so many Stargate seasons to get to. So I hope to see you back here for our next review of Politics. So for now, signing off. And if you want to come talk Stargate with us, come join us in my Stargate community on YouTube. I hope to see you there.